This region around the Great Lakes has been called the heartland. When it comes to agriculture, there's hardly an area in the world that compares.
Everybody, just hold on. I don't know what we're going to have here.
That's what brings the viewers back. That a boy.
Manage money, piling in.
Double digits higher.
So at this point, we're in kind of uncharted territory.
There's a lot of money on the sidelines.
So that was a crazy one.
Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, August 18th, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you get any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area. I'll be sure to get to it during the show. Overnight markets here at September corn down 3 1/4 at 380.5. September soybeans are down 4 1/2 at 1017 3/4, and September Chicago wheat was down 2 at 504.5. This morning, the USDA announced 124,000 metric tons of corn sold to unknown destinations for 25. On Friday, we did see NOPA Crush come out. Again, that was much better than expected. 195.69 million bushels is the fifth largest for any month on record there. So it was sharply higher than the estimate. What we know here starting out today, we got a big meeting in Washington. President Trump's meeting with Zelensky and a number of European leaders to discuss, the path forward with Russia. So I think outside markets will be closely monitoring that. Right now, the Dow's about unchanged. We've got September options go off Friday. I know the boys will talk about that. But before we get to markets, we've got a real special guest here this morning. Comes to us from the Andersons, Neil Schuller, head of Grower Solutions for the Andersons. Neil and I visited last week, and I thought it would be interesting for Neil to come on and share his experience being part of the USDA lockup for last week's report. I think there was some fascinating things, I thought, just in terms of the methodology, the way the process goes. And Neil, it's great to have you here this morning, man. Love to hear your experience.
Yeah, it in terms of an experience overall, just going to the lockup in general, pretty awesome. Something I've never done in coming up on 30 years in the industry. But to be in this particular report, in hindsight, was crazy, right? Overall. So just the experience overall, awesome. You get to the USDA building, usually around 10 o'clock. We rolled in there about that time. By the time you get through screening, etc., you walk in, you promptly place all electronics, anything that's electronically transmitting into a locker. So from about 10:15 on, you have no outside contact whatsoever with the world. The NAS does a nice job. They kind of took the guests who were there and explained the methodology behind collecting the survey, what all goes into that, which was pretty fascinating to really get to understand that a little bit differently. I know I learned a lot about that process that I did not know, and was something that I think will be beneficial overall. From there, you're kind of ushered into another area where you go through an additional set of metal detectors just to make sure that the first set, caught everything, followed by a Department of Homeland Security officer standing outside of the doors of the actual lockup. So we went in there, met with the folks who are the commodity level experts. So there were a team of 14 folks, each with their specific commodity. Everything from obviously corn, beans, wheat, down to apples, pears, tree nuts, peanuts, things of that nature. And one of the things that I learned that I really didn't know is those folks came in at 11 p.m. on Monday evening, also through the same lockup procedure that I just described. And at midnight, then all of the secured servers download all of the data, and then those folks work through the night to come up with the numbers that they have to have kind of consolidated, agreed upon as those numbers that they're going to put forward, and then they need to hand that off to the Wasde that then updates all of the balance sheets. And then you walk into the actual briefing room, which is not a big space at all, and sitting on your chair is a copy of the actual report. I don't know, I got my filter on so you can't really see it. Sitting on the chair, and I know I just talking here before we came online, I walked in the report as the first time I had a clock for about an hour and a half, and it was 11:42, and Justin asked, geez, when you had those numbers in front of you, how did that go down? It's like, it's a little bit of disbelief. First of all, it's like, holy cow, I've got the report, 17 minutes before the world's going to know. And then you kind of start looking at the numbers, particularly in this report. And it was obviously, the same shock that everybody had when they were released at noon. You were kind of processing through that. And, being a trader for a long time, your first inclination is to put on a trade. And then you realize all your electronics are locked up and you can't do that. And, the second thing is like, well, geez, I got to call friends, and you can't do that because your phone's in the locker too. But so you're kind of like hanging out with this awesome insight and awesome information, et cetera. But then Secretary Rollins came in, kind of welcomed everybody in. She, signed the report, and then the lockup briefing is literally a presentation by the NAS to the secretary. That's just goes through all the detail of the report. So the NAS individuals presented for about 35 minutes. The Wasde individuals stood up for about another 35 minutes. There was a question and answer period, which was literally only Seth Meyer, who's the chief economist for NAS, for the USDA, asking questions of the individual contributors of the report, and that was it. So pretty crazy. One of those things that, as we were talking about before the show came on, at the point I got back to my phone about 1:30, I was, sure I was going to see limit down corn, and surprised by that. So yeah, a great experience, and something that was really cool. And again, really cool to understand. So this was the second year for the August report that they pull forward FSA data on acreage. So it's something that typically they have only done that in the October report, and they're trying to just increase the level of accuracy by pulling that FSA data forward as part of their compilation. So it was the survey of producers, which I think this one was somewhere around 15,000, 16,000, they said, something of that nature, coupled with the FSA data, coupled with the USDA satellite imagery, which they have clarity down to a 10 meter by 10 meter square on field. So, they can indeed see quite clearly and quite closely the vegetative health of the crop from satellite. But again, that's only one component thereof.
So Neil, are they using satellite imagery for acres as well, or is that purely NAS now? FSA.
Yeah, it's a combination of, Justin. So they're factoring in both things. They're taking the FSA data, coupling that with what they're able to see on the satellite imagery as kind of like a back check between the two data points. And talking to some of the folks and asking some questions within the room, I mean, they're really trying to get as much data to provide as much clarity as possible. Something else I think is super important to, for everyone to know from a listener's perspective is NAS is, independent. They're a nonpartisan group, so they're not, concerned with who's sitting in the seat, so to speak, just down the street. So what their goal is to really provide the most accurate data they possibly can. And it was kind of interesting. I think a lot of farmers, we talk to guys all the time, as do you, and I think farmers go, oh, what do they really do with this survey data that they collect from the farm gate itself? And it was interesting to hear how much they really value that survey data. As a matter of fact, they said, we feel like there's nobody that understands the crop better than the farmer has that crop in their field. So they definitely take that data that they collect very serious from the farm gate.
And that participation levels continued to decline over the past, call it decades.
It has, and yeah, it has, and it's one of those things that is obviously a concern for them. They want to make sure that they continue to have that participation because of how much they value that. But it is one of those things that has declined over the years, and they do continue to try to find individuals within their list of folks that they've done surveys with in the past, but also new individuals as well. So they're constantly kind of refining that list to really find field level farm gate data to be a part of that.
Neil, what was your impression of Secretary Rollins and her ability to communicate to the industry?
Yeah, I I got to tell you, I was extremely impressed. Just kind of the first thing that struck me was like how very personable she was. So it's a little bit. I mean, we're in Washington D.C., right? So there's some pomp and circumstance that surrounds everything. And she came in about 5 minutes before she officially had to come in, just to say hello, welcome everybody, find out where everybody in the room was from. So there was a total of 40 guests from varying areas of the country. So she kind of was, talking about where's everybody from, thanked everybody for kind of the contribution that they make to agriculture and how important that is. And, of course, made sure to reiterate how hard they are working and how much President Trump appreciates everything that we're doing. But yeah, she struck me as very personable, very clear to communicate. And at the point that we were actually in session, man, she was locked in for sure on the numbers and taking a myriad of notes and asking questions of both Lance Honig, the head of NAS, as well as Seth Meyer, who were sitting at the table with her throughout the thing. So I think that she, was very locked in, very engaged, and very personable, and seemed genuinely concerned and wanting to make sure that she understood things clearly. Another thing that's pretty rare is for a sitting secretary, I guess, to attend a NAS report, which, that's another thing too. NAS puts out just over 400 reports a year. We talk, quite a bit about 3 to 5 of them maybe, but there's over 400 reports a year that come out by NAS. So for a sitting secretary to attend 1 to 2 in their term is kind of the rule of thumb. Otherwise, they send an undersecretary or a deputy who reports back, obviously. So having her there was rare to begin with, but I think that it was the importance of the report that she wanted to make sure that she was in person.
Well, you picked a good one to go to, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, quite by accident.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely an experience to remember.
Yeah, it's something I think to remember going forward. And I'd kind of forgotten, to be honest. I wasn't even looking at the acres number on my bingo card going into it, which I think a lot of people weren't. Kind of forgetting that they started that last year.
Yeah. And Justin, that's a really good point. And after the report and everything was over, we had kind of hung in the room to get a picture with other people's photographers, but because we didn't have anything. But we were actually chatting with Seth Meyer and Lance Honig both a little bit. And Lance Honig asked me a question. He said, do you think that the industry knows or remembers that we're pulling that FSA data forward? And I told him, no, I don't think so yet. It might jog everybody's memory, once it kind of gets reiterated that that's been pulled forward. But I said, by and large, no, I don't think that that's something that anybody would remember. I know that I had not remembered that from the year prior. But yeah, going forward, they're definitely wanting to keep that in place, again, to try to get a little bit more clarity on those numbers as early as they possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, it'll certainly be more accurate, going forward. So, I mean, it's a good change. It's just one of those that, you're so used to the June 30th report and then not till January.
Yes.
So did they talk about, will they continue to pull that data through the September and October report as well?
September, they stressed October. So October is definitely when they're going to come back with that data again. I did not hear anything mentioned about September, Justin,
Okay.
but October has been historically when those numbers really come into the fray, and they did say that they'll revisit it again in October. So it kind of sounds to me like it's going to be an August-October thing going forward.
Okay.
And they did say, hey, there's still numbers that are coming in. I want to say that they said from an acreage standpoint, about 82% had been reported. So a healthy amount. But, obviously still some that are out there to report in. So I believe that that's what October then catches up is to get that data set to 100, and then they'll compare it back.
Hopefully the last 18% isn't all corn.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, very good. Any other questions for Neil, guys? Oh, that was cool, Neil. Thanks for the insight, man. It was good to catch up with you. I thought everybody would get a kick out of that. So we'll certainly have to have you back down the road. But thanks for taking some time here this morning.
Absolutely, guys. I appreciate being on my War Room debut here. So it's been great, and appreciate all that you guys do, as partners of the Andersons, as well as for the industry overall.
Thanks, Neil.
All right, Neil. Have a good
Talk to
day.
you later.
Yep.
All
Take
right.
care.
We're buying corn. Thanks, Neil.
Well, I guess with that, Justin, maybe a few thoughts to start the week, just on things you're looking at. I know we got options going off Friday, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Pro Farmer Tour is going on this week, so I think the market's going to be kind of keyed into that to see what anecdotal evidence we have, state by state. Like them or don't like them, it's one of the bigger, scouting reports that we're going to get. Right, you're going to have a lot of different groups looking and a lot of pictures, so I think we'll get a good handle on what we're dealing with. I don't, historically they kind of flow kind of close to the USDA when they come up with their numbers, but I think I like it personally state by state just to kind of see versus what USDA has, just to see if we're kind of in the ballpark or if there's anything that's a big outlier. And then on top of that, we're going to start getting all these local crop reports, right? Or yield reports. So we'll start seeing these co-ops go out and do their little, 2 or 3 county yield estimates versus the last, 5 or 6 years. I think that's super helpful. And then I think the big one's going to be how we finish here. When you talk about, I know some of the crops are kind of, seems like they're speeding up, kind of finishing a little early. So I think it just depends on how that grain fill ends up. When you look and you do your kernel counts and be like, okay, are we going to divide through by 70,000 kernels, like in a really good year like last year? Is it going to be 80, 85, 90? Those are huge differences, obviously, on yield. So at least we'll get the kernel counts, versus historical averages for those areas. And then you kind of have to make your own assumptions on how did the crop finish? What's the health? I think all that's going to be stuff that we're going to be getting here in the next couple of weeks, right? And that's kind of why this August to, call it first notice day is just such a big time of year, because all that data is coming and you're going through basis only contracts that have to roll or price. So it's gonna be an interesting end of the month, I think.
Yeah, very good. Ben, anything to add before we wrap here this morning?
No, option expiration this week. I think we get busy the following week with basis contracts that are going to have to be reconciled. I don't expect a lot out of corn this week.
Very good. Rye, quickly here, let's talk about livestock. We didn't get really any guidance from the USDA at that press conference on Friday. We were kind of still sitting here left to digest all the screwworm stuff. And then, a good finish to the week for hogs, but they still were lower. So I guess share a few thoughts here as we kick it off.
Yeah, so I mean, just overall, the market really didn't get any of that sense of when the border is going to reopen, right? It just kind of kicking the can down the road. I mean, obviously more information to come, but I mean, at least Rollins kind of addressed it. They're going to throw $850 million to combat screwworm by essentially breeding sterile flies and sending them into the areas that are the most effective, which has been used in the past, I guess, with some success, but like it's a lot of money, and it sounds like this is a multi-year kind of program that's going to happen. They're literally building a new facility that for $100 million or $750 million, and then an extra $100 million throwing at the technology involved in it. So this is a kind of a big deal, I think, larger than most people would expect, but it still wasn't a lot of the news that the market really wanted to see. So I think the more cryptic statement that the ports don't open until we push back screwworm is kind of going to be the guiding force today. I mean, at this point, I think everybody's going to be scratching their heads and say what price is too high now, because these feeders aren't going to be able to come into the U.S. with, anytime soon. So that still just kind of keeps this problem at the forefront just about of the tight supply narrative. So overall, cash was still firm. Cutout, we had choice beef hit 400. So I mean, like the prices are still going higher. It's just I'd expect the volatility to continue at this stage in the game. We did see managed money slightly cut back their long positions in both live cattle and feeders last week, to be expected with that kind of volatility. But overall, it seems like the trend is still pretty positive here. So we'll keep an eye on cutout and slaughter rates and see if they start to come back at all. But as of right now, it doesn't kind of look like they are. As far as hogs, yeah, I mean, still kind of a good close, but finished lower on the week. I mean, you had a little bit of weakness on the cash side of things, but overall cash still finished up for the week. So I mean, I think just in general with cash
sitting around 107. Down about 250 on the week. Just kind of feels like we're likely to see a little bit of intraday weakness, but overall, just kind of feels like everybody's waiting to watch, wait and see with how cutout performs this week.
All right, appreciate the update there. Just came into the open here. We got September corn down 2 now at 381 3/4. September soybeans are down 2 1/4 at 10.20, and September Chicago wheat's up a penny now at 507 1/2. This afternoon we'll get crop conditions at 3 o'clock Central, so we'll take a look there. Also, we should see some stuff roll in from Pro Farmer, so we'll visit about that in our evening commentaries, and then certainly discuss that tomorrow morning on the War Room. Appreciate everybody that tunes in on a daily basis. If you wouldn't mind, throw us a like and certainly subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything to do so. Don't keep you up to speed on everything that's going on with AgYield. So again, thanks to everybody that supports the show. We're doing this live every day that the markets are open on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live at 8:15 Central Time. Appreciate the thoughts and comments here this morning, guys. It was a good show. Hope everybody has a good start to the week. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
The War Room is proudly presented by AgYield. For over 50 years, the AgYield team has provided grain marketing and risk management solutions for growers across the country. Our veteran consultants harness cutting-edge technologies to pinpoint risk, optimize market performance, and protect your farm's profitability. Discover a new approach to farm revenue management at agyield.com.
Hey guys, Jack here. Be sure to support the show by hitting the like button, leaving us a comment, and subscribing to the channel for all the latest updates. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.